Yeah, welcome back to Making Waves with the Hen Hud class of 85 and friends. I'm your host, Dave San Marco, along with the co-host and co-creator of this joint, Diane D. Money Malice. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. And you know what? The two that have become our permanent co-hosts now, it seems like, is the incredible, the amazing, and the only one really here that can keep Stuart Muir in line, Miss Karen Quinn Close.
There you go, Karen.
What's up, girlfriend?
How are you? So happy to be here.
And we're so happy that you are here. And now, not the man of the hour, but at least the man of the next 10 seconds, Stuart Muir. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, David. Thank you. Does that mean like Karen and I are sort of like Doc Severinsen of this little quartet?
Yes. Yes. You guys are like Johnny and Doc Severinsen. This is great, man. Who said McMahon? I don't know.
Diane would be a McMahon.
I don't know if she could do that laugh, but if you have a really severe cough, Diane, I think you'd be able to pull it off. I really do.
No, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, we just have to get you really sick and something.
Yeah, I'll have to. Oh, please, no.
All right,
I'll pass on the opportunity.
God bless. So this is something tonight. It was a big deal for us. We really wanted to do this, is to find our classmates and administrators, teachers. We had Mr. LaValle on. Next month, we're going to have on Mr. Joe Ryan from Blue Mountain. But this one was a biggie, and I was nervous just calling this guy. He was on 60.
He's a huge deal.
He's what?
He's a huge deal.
He is. He's a big deal. He's a big deal.
He almost makes this show legitimate.
Oh my goodness.
If that's possible, the weight of legitimacy is on the shoulders of our next guest, somebody who it's an honor to have, an honor to call a classmate. So, Hen Hud, party people, put those hands together for Hen Hud's own, West Point's own, Dr. David Frey!
Yay!
Wow.
There he is.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I have to say that was one of the more impressive, and also one of the, there is a lot of weight on my shoulders now to make this show legitimate. So I have a lot to do.
Right. This is like bigger than the 60 Minutes interview.
Oh, yeah.
60 Minutes is not doing it like this, baby. They're not wilding out like us, but, we can do that because we're classmates. So,
yes.
We're classmates, but Dave looks terrified.
No, it's
I don't know what you've just gotten yourself into.
I'm game. So it's great to see all of you. It has certainly been a while, and the last I remember, Karen was the only person who could keep Stu in line. So I think that brings back memories.
37 years later, still the only person who can control me.
And this is why this is one of the reasons we asked her to be co-host, is when we saw that she would check Stuart when he needed it, because he kind of jumped on, I think, our first episode, real episode. We did two or three test episodes, and the first real one Stuart came on, and then when KQ came on, she checked his ass into the boards, and we're like, okay, we're in good situation right now. We wrestled control from him. So, but anyway,
sound so mean.
He's not.
You make Stu sound like such an animal.
No, he's just, he's a little bit wild, man. But he knows that if he messes up, you're gonna say something. So, anyway, David, let's get to you, man. It's an honor to have you. Obviously, you're incredibly accomplished. I think that says something about. Man, that's like I have a friend who's on SEAL Team 6. He has the exact same tone on his cell phone. Because it's that bell at Bud's that they ring when you said,
about that.
I've had enough, I'm leaving. So, yeah, everybody put their phone on Do Not Disturb, except David. He might get a call from West Point. So, David, my first question is sort of like, we all come from the same stock from a standpoint that we all come from Hen Hud, something that has brought us all back together after a 21-year career where I didn't talk to anybody and was laser focused on my mission. Now I've been able to. They've basically taken me back in, even Stuart. So from that standpoint, Tell us about your experience at Hen Hud, please. What may have been formative there at Hen Hud?
Well, I enjoyed the fact that we got to do such a variety of things, and we actually had different kinds of circles that mixed together. And so whether it was playing soccer, whether it was debating, whether it was playing, I think we called it desk fighters in Mrs. Williams' AP European history class, where we would just kind of pick up the desks and pretend that they were the guns on the X-wing fighters from Star Wars. Remember all that?
Yes.
And
wow.
so that would so that whole variety of experience was I think what moved me forward.
That you know what, I'm going to do Diane next. The school was very diverse, and it took in people like me. You missed the last episode where we had Mr. LaValle on. He was not only wrestling coach but my special education teacher. And I never felt when I was around anybody that any of you guys, that I felt like I was different because I was in special education. And I think that speaks to the environment of the school. But let me go to, so we'll go Diane, Karen, and then Stuart, just because the way we're positioned here. Go for it, my friend.
Yeah, well, so great to see you, Dave. And I don't know if you heard me before on the pre-check, but I do get into DC a good bit, so we'll have to connect since we're so close to each other. That's awesome.
Yeah, great. It's fun place.
It is. It's super fun. It's super fun. We'll have to chat more about that offline. But so, in regard, we're very proud of you for all you've done. This is so neat to be able for you to share your busy day with us. So we have a couple different rounds of questions. So first, I just wanted to know, in high school, was there like somebody, a teacher or administrator that you felt was like a really good influencer for you, for your career path, or just, somebody who really stood out to you and, shaped you for who you are today?
Yeah, I think I mentioned Mrs. Williams, and she actually was the one of those who kind of sparked my love of history. That really kind of grew in college. I got a chance to do a couple of really fun things. I was able to be one of the first to get into the Martin Luther King archives in Atlanta. I got a grant to do that. I was able to study in London. That was fantastic. Met my wife there as well.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
so it worked out quite well.
That's great.
We could probably do the next 30 minutes on him going, having access to the Martin Luther King archives in Atlanta. Like that could be like 30 minutes right there.
Right.
One of my favorite, if not my favorite figure, one of my very favorite figures in history. And let's go to KQ.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
There's not going to be any animosity between Diane and yourself that she is down in Annapolis with the Navy working for West Point,
We're
right?
connected.
No,
You guys are going to play nice?
we'll play nice.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, love. I didn't.
I'm
continue.
good.
So one of the interesting things is one of our, I think I told Dave this the other day, Carissa Charles, who works with you at West Point as an engineer, her daughter is a student there, and her son she just dropped off at the Air Force Academy. So she has 2 kids in college and 0 bills.
Wow, excellent. I did not know. So what year is Chris's oldest?
If you remember, the oldest is a she will be going into her sophomore year now.
Okay.
Yeah, next year. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So I look forward to meeting him or her.
It's a her. So
Okay.
I want to say her name is Michaela.
Michaela.
She's on the softball team, and her son's name is Gabe, and he just hit off for the Air Force Academy. But I was like, Carissa, man, single mom, what an amazing. Not only did she battle and defeat cancer, but she's gotten these 2 kids to a point where they got accepted to a service academy. It's pretty big.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
class of '88. So anyway, Stuart.
David, what a pleasure. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. I don't think I've seen you since we graduated, honestly.
No, we got to see each other at the it was at the 25th or the 30th reunion, one of those.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it was brief, but it's
I was probably very intoxicated, so I apologize.
What else is new?
No, no,
He
no.
says probably, like that was a question.
Right, exactly.
So, David, how often do you see other people from Hendrick Hudson? Do you keep close contact with some people from school?
The one person who I see reasonably regularly is Seth Gold out in California. Believe it or not, I make at least an annual trip out to LA. I run a center where one of my main donors is out there, and I go and visit him and talk to some other folks out there. So I get to see Seth. Occasionally get to see Andy Seligson, who's in Boston.
Oh, wow.
And then who else do I say? Very, very rarely I've seen Cynthia Wade, but not that often. Talked to Audrey Harrer, but that's about it. So
Cynthia, you may be challenging Cynthia for the most famous 85 graduate now.
Oh no! I'm nowhere near. You guys are talking me up way too much. So
it's what we do.
That's our job.
Got a long way to go before I win an Oscar.
We love all our classmates, and we want you to laugh and have fun. Thomas Bell has a question for you here, Dave, on screen. Actually, it's just a comment.
Yeah.
So can you read that?
Well, yes, I can. Thank you. I appreciate you guys reaching out to me, and I do think you're giving me far too much credit. I'm a professional historian. I got lucky to be able to work at West Point, and I've taken a couple lucky steps and been able to appear on a show that normally features people who are indicted. So I was pretty happy.
That's when Stu was on.
Yeah.
Mike Wallace going, so Stuart, tell us again what happened at McHale's and how you poisoned that couple. I'm just kidding.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway. So Dave, first, if you would tell us what university you did go to, and then maybe if you could take us into how that, when that decision happened that you were going to become a historian. When did that happen?
That's a good question. I can easily answer the first part. So I went to Dartmouth after graduating and had a fantastic 4-year experience there. Worked for 3 years after that in admissions at Dartmouth, and was involved with, we graduated from college. If you graduated in 4 years, we graduated in '89 when the Berlin Wall fell. And at the time, I was actually thinking my desire to go to grad school was not clear yet. I was thought I wanted to be a historian. I did a thesis with, as I mentioned, it wasn't on Martin Luther King, but it was on the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, so civil rights in the United States. And I thought I was going to pursue that, but then the Berlin Wall fell, and I figured, why not just switch to a country somewhere in Eastern Europe and be one of the first people into the archives? And so I tried that, and I figured, how hard could Hungarian be?
It's nothing.
To pick that up, and ended up studying language for a little while. Went to Germany, went to Hungary multiple times to learn language, and then went to grad school at Columbia. Graduated from there in about 2003. So it took me a little while, but eventually graduated, and have been teaching in a variety of different places. Before I was actually teaching before I graduated. I taught high school in Boston.
Oh, wow.
In a public charter school in Boston and learned how to teach, right? Because for anybody who goes to grad school in some of these kinds of fields, you don't really learn to teach in grad school. You learn how to do research. And so I needed to learn how to teach. So I had to do that somewhere. And but it did convince me that that high school wasn't for me, because I like to have fun in class, and my students just did not understand my sense of humor. And so it was painful.
Oh,
so I decided I had to go somewhere where people got references to Monty Python, and even the ones you were making before about the Ed McMahon and Doc Severinsen. See, that dates us. That really does.
Date us.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm not embarrassed to be our age. Totally dig it. I'm still going to be listening to 60s and 70s and 80s music. I don't care what they come up with. So
that's right. So that's what got me to eventually to to West Point. West Point was my first tenure track job, and I'm still there.
You want to come to the Naval Academy?
I've been to. I do stuff with the Naval Academy every year. I actually just to assure both you and Carissa that we play well with all of the other academies. My center actually operates on behalf of the other academies, so it's an inter-academy center. So
have you spoken at those other institutions?
I've spoken at Coast Guard, but I've been to both of the other ones to do projects and research, and I bring their students to and their faculty to different events that I have. Most of them in DC, actually. Collaborate a lot with the Holocaust Museum in DC and bring them on projects to do curricular planning, to do work incorporating atrocity prevention into not just the other service academies, but what we call the professional military education schools, the ones for every time you get promoted, as Dave knows, you got to go back to school and learn what you're supposed to do and what your responsibilities are at that level of promotion. And so I work with all of those different schools all the way up to the National War College.
Yeah, PME. We're going to get into, you just alluded to atrocity prevention, and we're going to get into that later because when you and I spoke on the phone, you spoke passionately about that, and we'll get into that. Along with Audrey Harrer gave me a great question to ask you, but it's for later because we're not there yet. Chronologically speaking. Also, while we're here, shout out to Andy Seligson, Furnace Woods fam. Shout out to Seth Gold, another brother of mine from Furnace Woods, who I also talk to fairly regularly and did get to see him when I lived in SoCal as well. So phenomenal guy. He just had something going on tonight. That's the reason why he didn't join us and harass you as well. So, KQ, my friend.
Yes.
If you have a question for Dave.
Now I think that you guys are intimidated. Don't worry.
You know what? I'm fighting a tickle, I keep coughing, so I keep putting myself on mute, and I'm coughing, so I may miss some things. But okay, Dave. So you, you were saying that you were like 45 minutes from Diane. And again, this has nothing to do with the topic.
You just trying to get us together, aren't you? Trying to get us together for a
He's
happy
leaving
hour.
tomorrow. He's moving back to.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I can beat that, Dave. I live in New Windsor.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
Yes.
So we actually, in reality, in like permanent life, we are next door neighbors. That's we'll have to.
Yes.
Where in New Windsor?
And, actually, I'm in Rock Tavern, kind of off of Station Road by Weirs, which nobody else knows what we're talking about.
I know exactly where that is.
That's right. If you're in New Windsor, you know where Weirs is.
Yeah.
And I know you live in New Windsor because I used to work with your dad at the medical college.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So that's why when I haven't seen you since high school either, and I'm looking at you now, I said, my God, he looks just like his dad.
I do. I very much do. A little heavier than I want to be, but I do look like my dad.
Aren't we all?
How are your parents, David?
Well, unfortunately, my father just passed away in January, but my mom's doing well. But yeah, my dad had a bout with cancer, and cancer doesn't care. Right? It doesn't care who you are or what type and hits you.
The Freys were longtime customers of JP McHale. I met Mr. and Mrs. Frey very often when I go to their home, and I recently talked. I won't say recently, but I talked to your mother maybe a year or so ago. She called about an issue, and it was great to talk to her because I hadn't talked to her in a long time.
Yeah, so I'm still a customer. She just told me that you guys got bought. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were purchased by a country, by a company in Sweden.
Wow.
Yeah, Lithuania now owns McHale's. I don't know if you knew that.
Sweden basically owns JP McHale. So yeah, they purchased them about 3 years ago. So they're trying to make JP McHale a huge name in the world of pest control now.
Yeah, Stu drove the business into the ground, and somehow they decided to keep him. And it may have been a good decision. I mean, he looks great on camera. So it really has a lot of qualities in addition to his left and right leg and foot. So,
well, there's definitely pests to be controlled down here and where I'm living currently in DC. So you need to
We're getting big and we're going everywhere, David. We'll be there soon.
Some of our friends from Hen Hud would say I'm a pest that needs to be controlled as well. So I don't know if Stuart needs to spray me with something when I come to New York. We're trying to get together something where he wants me to grow like sort of Dixonian mutton chops, from Dixonian London, and he's going to wear a kilt, which is going to make Bruce Jersey lose his mind from the second that Stuart walks into dinner until the end. So we're going to see if we can make that happen at a reasonable price, and I'm willing to contribute to that. So anyway,
You guys are nuts. You're just,
Everybody's got to have goals.
Yeah.
There you go, Dave.
and
It's
they get
about
more simple
fun.
as you get older.
You know what, Dave? When we go to work and we're professionals, and everybody here is, we have to be grown up. We have to be mature. We have to show the wear of our years and our wisdom. But I don't have to do that when I'm around my friends. I can just have fun and just be Dave. I don't have to be Air Force Dave that doesn't smile as much and is very serious about his work. And that's what happens when we get together. It's very much like a more mature version of us in high school again.
Absolutely.
It's so much fun every time we do it. We'll go and we'll have dinners, or we'll go to the pub and have a couple of beers, and it's just
You
so
know
much
what?
fun.
It's a little
Everybody's-
crazy. He's making it sound like, rose-colored glasses there. It's kind of crazy.
Well, that's because you go and stay at Jill's house. So
Yeah, we stay late.
One of these recent days, before I get into my next question for you, Jill Corey, if you remember her, she lived in sort of like the border of Croton and Hen Hud. She has this beautiful home in Peekskill that she's designed that's gorgeous, and she invites everyone and anyone to not only come there and eat, drink, and be merry, but to stay over. And the time when Diane came, girl sleeping upstairs was like Christine, was Diane, Trish Mahoney, Christine Karathanassis. Who else was there? Paige Miller. So
Yeah.
there was like 5 girls having a senior year sleepover at Jill Corey's upstairs.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
During COVID.
That's awesome.
It's
So
so
we're kind of
cool.
all a little like, ooh.
Safety first.
It's so cool. Like, because if you wouldn't have done that, then it really wouldn't be the same, but you didn't care. You're like, I'm going to go crash with these girls there. And Jill ends up staying up till like 3 a.m. So I'm sure you went to bed before her.
I was the first one to go to bed, and it was at 3.
Yeah.
And I was like ready at 1, and Merle stayed over too.
Yes,
Merle
Merle.
was there too, and I was like, I gotta go. I was like, I felt like a lightweight, but I was like, I'm done.
I honestly think, though, since we've seen you, they've dialed it back to 2 a.m. I think by 2 a.m. they're in bed now. So that, for what that's worth. Dave.
Where did I see Merle recently? I did see Merle within the last couple of years. Maybe, the last couple of years is actually just COVID, but a couple of years before that, I think I remember seeing Merle. She's in the the HUD region still, right?
She lives in Connecticut.
Yeah,
About 10 miles north of Danbury.
Okay.
She's a nurse.
Somewhere.
She's a nurse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. She has 2 kids, a husband, I believe, and she's into nursing. So she's just as amazing and giving and checking on just like she was in high school. She's amazing. You'll see her. She'll be there. She has not missed any of these. So she comes down every time. We even had Cam Fontana at one. We had Stacy Beck at one. So we've had a lot of different people, but there's a core group of probably like 14 or 15 of us that turn up every time. So,
Dave, have you eaten in the Paradise Pizza place?
Have I?
Have you eaten in Paradise Restaurant?
I don't think so.
See?
Is that where?
River Plank. That's where we meet to have dinner.
And I haven't been there, so it'll all be new for me.
New experience. Well, it hasn't changed. If you went there in 1985, David.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Place.
Yeah, no, okay. I have been there. I have not been there in 35 years.
Well, 1975 is what he meant to say.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Wow.
The wooden panel walls and all that. But that's what I love about it. I don't want, obviously you go home, you don't want it to change. So they'll do a spread just for us. I go over a menu with him that encompasses a bunch of different things. and then they do a spread just for us. So I'll take care of all of that. And people who have dietary concerns tell me, and I tell them like they do gluten-free or whatever. So.
All right, so some things have changed.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, that has changed. They are doing gluten-free because it didn't exist in '85. Nobody had a gluten problem back then, but it's societally we've changed. Our genetics have changed, and we have that now. Anyway, David, you could have chosen a lot of different academic institutions to ply your trade, and you chose West Point.
Yes. Well, part of it was that West Point chose me first. So that's the academic job market's kind of rough. So believe it or not, I applied for over 2 years. I think I applied for about 100 different jobs, and I was a finalist only for 5 of them. It's a pretty rough market out there, but the choices were actually kind of odd. The time I was a finalist, at the same time I was applying to West Point, I was a finalist at the Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand. And my wife said, that is literally as far as we could possibly go from our families. My grandmother was still alive, and we had just had we had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So we decided maybe not.
Yeah.
Dave, that's not true, because I heard the Bikini Atoll also has a very small academic institution, even though it's only one room. You could have been teaching
that could have been slightly further.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good place to teach, right? The radiation free. So then, and the other choice was actually Simmons College, which is probably, if you could think of a college that's almost the opposite of West Point. It's an all women's school up in Boston. And so the choices were rather odd, rather diverse. And West Point was the one that said, offered me the job first, and one of my advisors was unsure whether or not that he was from that generation that was born during World War II and grew up as a pacifist in Germany. He was German born, and he said, "Do you really want to work for a military academy?" And I said, "I don't know. Ask me in a year." And that was now 19 years ago. So
pretty good marriage.
The answer.
Pretty good marriage. Yeah. Obviously they like you, and they've gotten quite a return on their investment. So
yeah, as you know, it's a neat place. The service academies are really interesting and fantastic places to work. I've got amazing students. I've got great colleagues, really smart. Constant turnover, because the way the military works is that half of our faculty are only there for 2 to 3 years, and then they rotate back out into the active duty military. And so lots of change, and the only people who grow old are people like me, because otherwise we're always same age captains and majors, always same age lieutenants and colonels, and just the civilians.
This is sounding like Logan's Run, where when the little red thing on your hand turns red, you have to go to carousel. So you probably don't know that reference.
Old Age Run? No,
Logan's Run with Dirk Benedict. Yeah. Dirk Benedict. Great movie about when you turn 30, this little thing went red on your hand and you had to go to carousel. Problem was nobody ever came back from carousel. Anyway, Diane, your turn, my friend.
Well, I think he almost kind of answered it, because I was going to ask you how you find, working at West Point different from other levels of higher education. We've all went to different colleges, and yeah. I know that when I went to a culinary school up in Rhode Island, and I know that they said when I was there that, because it was really strict, like we couldn't have anything. They were like, "This is the strictest besides West Point." I mean, we had uniform inspections, and it was a little crazy. I found that hard to believe. I think they just threatened us with that, but yeah. So I just wonder, being at West Point, how, and being, a professor there, like, how you think that it's different from other places. Do they do anything different, or what's your thoughts on that?
Sure. So yeah, you learned one of the secrets that we kind of teach is that a lot of leadership is not necessarily having authority, but making people think you do. And so that idea of saying, was it Johnson and Wales that you went to?
I did, yes.
Yeah. So that there's a really strict place, at least creates that perception that you have to stay in line. And so one of the things that I think is very different is that it is a military institution, and my office is right next to an arsenal, and so it's actually a historic weapons arsenal, but it is an arsenal nonetheless. And so that's one thing that's slightly different. But I would have to say that there's a couple things that I get to do that I would never have had the opportunity to do. So I have a little bit of input in aspects of policy in the Department of Defense. I've been able to kind of create different work on atrocity and atrocity prevention that has created cohorts of leaders that are now getting to be at the major and above. So mid-career professionals that hopefully will then eventually make policy within the armed forces, and you get exposure to some pretty incredible things. And so it's very different in that regard. So I went from teaching at Columbia, where it's really great students, a great institution, and then suddenly to a very, very different institution. So I had students who felt very entitled and would complain about a B+ at Columbia, and then students who everyone asked, "Can you make them do push-ups?" And if I wanted to, I guess I could, but I don't. There are other people who make them do push-ups. So, but it's fun. It's they're really idealistic. They're really bright. They want to actually make the world a better place, and it's really fun to be part of that mission.
And they could be killed. Like the likelihood of your students at Columbia going to war and being killed was not likely unless they were in ROTC. And I'm not sure if I think they actually have a ROTC at Columbia. But your students at West Point's a very real possibility that you must think about when you look in their shining faces sometimes.
Yeah, I do, and it happened. So one of my thesis students, someone who I taught in a total of 3 classes, Sal Korma, graduated class of 2010 or 2008, excuse me, and was killed as a lieutenant in Afghanistan in 2010. And that was the hardest letter I've ever had to write. And I didn't have to write it, but I chose to write to his parents because he meant something to me, and I know that in that kind of situation, parents want to hear about what their kids accomplished, and he was a great kid, and that is something that I do keep in mind. And so I tell, one of the things that we have to kind of stay away from in talking to our students is not every single thing is a life or death situation. We don't want them to think that, if I don't make the corner of my bed correctly, then it's then someone might be killed. But we do talk about how that attention to detail does matter. That if you don't learn how to pay attention to those important things that you don't think are important, but they may be, you may not properly put on the neck portion of your body armor, and you get
some
around right in between.
Yep.
Right. And you don't put your helmet on the right way. You don't strap it on. It comes off when you crash. And it's those little things that you have to pay attention to when your life is on the line or other people's life is on the line. And so that does figure in, and that's a heavy burden. That's why I have a huge amount of respect for the students that choose to do this, and for those who choose to enlist as well. It doesn't mean not just those who decide to go to a service academy or to enter an ROTC program, but those who at age 18 decide to enlist. That's a hefty decision that I'm not sure when I was 18 I was ready to make a decision like that.
Right. I would think too, like the students, like it's because what I see from the students at the Naval Academy, like they're there, it's a free education for them, and they're committed. Whereas, a lot of other different universities and, people can change, they can do whatever they want, change careers at any point. But I feel they're there and they're digging in and they're ready. They're committed to everything. Probably.
You can do that also at a service academy. You could change the focus of your major. You can
Oh, yeah.
change what your career is going to be. That's not an issue. The issue is you can't wake up one morning and say, I'm not going to class.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, one of the things that, you can look at it on the one hand and say, wow, the taxpayer is really nice to these students at these places. On the other hand, we let them go for 2 years, and if at the end of their second year they're not convinced that they want to be officers, and this is true at the Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, but if they don't want to be officers, I used to think, oh man, what a waste if they leave. But no, it's actually probably a good thing. If they're not ready to do that, then they shouldn't be officers, because that hesitation matters. And so they can change majors just like any other student. They have a hefty amount of courses they have to take. So I teach some of the required or core courses. Every cadet has 32 required courses that they have to take. So that ranges from physics to multiple history courses to calculus to several semesters of a foreign language, you name it. So there's a lot of different courses that they're all required to take. But then for their major, there's a much more flexibility than there used to be. So at the time we went to school, and actually Bill Bajesi graduated from West Point. And when he went there were, I think, just a handful of different majors you could choose from. And that's changed substantially over the 30, 35 years. And especially since people like me didn't get hired there until after 1992. And it wasn't until then that they really kind of expanded the number of offerings and number of majors by bringing in civilian faculty who could teach a variety of different things.
Dave, when you teach at West Point and you get a call from 60 Minutes that they want to do an interview, because you're at West Point, do you have to go through certain channels? Is there things that West Point gets involved
100%. You had to go to PA.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So 60 Minutes actually wanted to film at on West Point. And if you know West Point well and you look closely at those pictures, they're at the Thayer Hotel. They're not actually at West Point. And the reason was because the public affairs folks, I'm sure Dave is familiar with this, public affairs said, well, this doesn't actually concern cadets. And so we're not going to just let people film on West Point. So even 60 Minutes got turned down by West Point's public affairs people.
Does your reputation change after the show aired? Did it become more popular? Were you the teacher everybody wanted to have in class now?
We shall see. It's been weird because all of this happened within more or less the last year, a little over a year, and most of that time I've been on sabbatical, so that's why I'm here in DC. And when I go back, we'll see. But previous to that, also we were all still at least I was teaching remotely due to COVID.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be really interesting to go back. It's really a fresh start for me because I haven't been in person at West Point for nearly 2.5 years at this point.
Oh wow.
Dave, we'll find out if the 18 to 35 demo is alive and well for 60 Minutes. We'll find out by virtue of the fact that how many of your students.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
61.
Yeah, 60. Yeah, exactly. So with the amount of time we have left, we really need to dig into the Ritchie boys and World War II. And I'm going to dive right off the diving board. Not the low one, Dave. We're going to go to the high board, the one where you're like, oh shit, when you get up there. Sorry, did I just curse? With Audrey Harrah's question. And that's going to get us into it. So Audrey, and I know Audrey's watching right now. Audrey, yes, we're going to get right into it, love. She is such a great supporter of everything that we do on Making Waves. Without her, I don't know. I mean, just Diane is the inspiration behind the show. The show wouldn't have happened if Diane didn't say, let's do a show. So I wouldn't be doing this if not for her. And then after that, Audrey is the one who every time we need something, she's there. So let me get to her question.
Usually in her car, though.
Yeah, you.
Oh
Usually
my
she's
God,
in her
it's
car.
hysterical. She's always going somewhere.
So Audrey Harrer, quote, Professor Frey, I'm so impressed with the work you are doing. It's no secret that the Richie Boys story is my favorite 60-minute story ever. Heart emoji. Camp Richie was in operation from 1926 to 1998. Why were the fabulous Richie Boys not disclosed until the 1990s? That's part one of this question, and we'll get to part two after that.
So part one's fairly easy. That there's a couple of reasons. Number one, a lot of World War II vets kept quiet about what they did. It was they saw a lot of really awful things, and it was hard for them to talk about, and so they came back and to some extent buried it. Second, it was a military intelligence training camp, and so while the existence of the camp was known, what they did there was
classified.
Secret. They were told keep it that way for 50 years, and so it wasn't until the way classification works is normally it's a 25-year classification. It was renewed once, and most of the time is for intelligence issues, and then became known, and some things started to become released, and people started talking about it as they were interviewed. The part of it also is that that some of these individuals, it took until the 90s before people actually did oral history. So some of them were done in the 80s, but they mentioned that they worked at Camp Ritchie, but they really didn't say much more. It's not till the 90s and the early 2000s that they actually talk about it. They start having reunions. Film comes out in 2004, a documentary made by some Austrians, and then then it actually little by little has become something that we've known more. And the last couple of years has been, it's been a real privilege for me to be part of the opportunity of bringing them to light. As a historian, I kind of look at this and say, man, I wish I had chosen this topic 20 years ago, when many more of them were still alive. I've had the incredible opportunity to talk to most of the ones you saw in 60 Minutes, but also about 4 or 5 other living Richie Boys who are just amazing. Had brunch with one last weekend at age 97, still reads the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, writes letters to the editor on a regular basis, and it's still incredibly sharp. And so it's amazing. And there's still one guy who's 108 years old and still kicking.
That's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very moving for me. That totally makes sense, Audrey. Classification is the issue there, Audrey. And I know she's watching, so everybody say hi, Audie. And that's an issue in the UFO community as well. Ironically, Dave, of our high school classmates that have had a prolific UFO sighting, and there's 7 or 8 of them, Audrey's one of them. Her and her father saw a gigantic triangular craft fly right over Montrose, completely silent, with a strange lighting pattern in the 80s when there was a craze of UFOs. So the classification there has been an issue that the government hasn't released, and obviously it also with the Richie Boys. Let me get to part 2 of her question. Part 2 of her question, sir, is why keep these incredible men top so you basically answered that. She asked why keep these incredible men top secret so long after the war ended. Neither Dave nor myself nor anybody could answer that question. The U.S. government is the only one that can answer why classification occurs. And if you're asking, do we overclassify things? The answer is yes. In many, many cases that I've seen myself, but I can't answer why. That's something that I can't speak on behalf of the U.S. government. I've seen many documentaries and news clips on the Richie Boys, but I feel they need a feature film to make their story well known, Dave.
Well, I wish I could say I was the one working on this, but I know that there are some people who are trying to do that.
Dave, if only you had a classmate that was a filmmaker. If only we knew someone that fit that description. All right.
Someone with an award from Hollywood, perhaps. Someone like that.
Yeah, perhaps. So.
All right, Cynthia. I will text Cynthia tomorrow about the Richie Boys documentary, and she'll probably answer me sometime in March. for my birthday. Anyway, no, actually, she was very kind. She answered me recently because we were going to try to get. She's very busy right now with a couple of projects. I was going to get her on here tonight, but hopefully she will come on with us maybe after September. I think is when she's going to get freed up. So David, take us into. We spoke earlier about prevention of atrocities. I'm a Jewish person. A lot of people don't know I'm Jewish because my last name is San Marco. My father's an Italian man from Brooklyn, but my mother is a Jewish woman from Queens. Went to Forest Hills High School with Simon and Garfunkel, actually. Somebody sing "Hello Darkness, Smile." Anyway, so it resonates with me very much what you're doing. It's very personal to me, like I'm sure it is to you. Talk about atrocity prevention and your mission with the relative to the young officers at West Point, please.
Sure, but I think Karen put a quick question in there. So
Please.
Before we jump forward into that, I'll
Okay.
fill people in on the Ritchie Boys. And luckily, I mean, 60 Minutes is getting their money's worth out of this one. They're actually re-airing the full hour version of it on the 3rd of July. So if you haven't had a chance to see it,
great.
if you have any desire, it's on again on the 3rd of July. But basically, I've got a larger project that looks at 60 minutes, not 60 minutes, looks at Camp Ritchie and its what led to it and the impact that its graduates had in the post-war period as well. But it was a military intelligence training camp. It was the military intelligence training camp that was set up in 1942 because the Army realized it didn't have the ability to do battlefield intelligence. So in large maneuver armies, you actually need people in the field to be able to gather tactical intelligence, to interrogate prisoners, to translate documents that you capture, to interpret aerial photographs that you're able to take, to be able to look at you capture someone and you see the patches and the markings on their uniform, and that can tell you a lot about the unit that they belong to, and you got to know about the unit, you got to know where it served, who commands it, all those sorts of things. So gathering all that intelligence and assembling it so that we knew what we were fighting against, so that you're not surprised when all of a sudden you realize, okay, well, we captured this guy, which probably means that there's some tanks coming behind him, or that there's some artillery that's also attached to this particular group. So that was really important to know. And so they trained people at this camp, and they used a lot of immigrants, of people who had all kinds of language abilities of the enemy armies, and not just German-speaking folks, but also people who spoke Russian, Hungarian, Polish, all the languages of the Balkans, etc., the European language, French, the European languages in general, because you needed to gather intelligence not only from the people you capture, but also the people whose lands you're in, who might be able to provide you with important information. And so the study that I am doing is about how the Army came to understand that people who are different could actually provide some degree of tactical and strategic intelligence, and why that mattered, and why those people then became in the post-war period, because they were selected based not only on their language but also on how well they did on intelligence tests. They became some of the leading ambassadors, creators of organizations like the NSA and the CIA, academics, culture figures, writers, college presidents, active in the space program, all kinds of people who really helped to shape the Cold War world. In addition to the fact that they were some of the main people who did the translation and interrogation of all the war criminals and all the material that we learned about the Holocaust and about the crimes that were committed by the Nazis. And then they also became the people who established what we knew about the way the Russians fought, and helped us to kind of begin that process of preparing for the Cold War. So that's part of my larger project. That's not really featured on 60 Minutes, but what they did during the war is. So hopefully that kind of explains the Ritchie boys and why they're important. And the amount of intelligence that they provided was substantial. Basically, about 60% of the usable intelligence on the Western fronts. So that included in Italy, in France, North Africa. The majority of that intelligence came from people trained at Camp Ritchie. And the people who were trained at Camp Ritchie went out prior to D-Day, prior to the invasion of Europe. They trained other people, and they were able to actually create the capacity for gaining intelligence through all the different ways that we do today. So if you think about what's going on in Ukraine, there's a lot now that's publicly available. So you probably have seen satellite pictures of Russian tanks and artillery and caravans of columns of armor. A lot of that was not available at the time, but it would have been the kind of aerial photography that these guys were looking at and interpreting, trying to find where artillery were hiding in the trees and trying to figure out where units were planning to attack. And so real interesting and important contributions to the successful war effort.
Cultural things we could not get around without their insight because we had not lived in German culture and they had.
Exactly, and part of it was even sometimes they end up interrogating people that they know, that they either knew just because they had lived in the same city, and so they were all trained in ways where you didn't use violence. Now that doesn't mean that on occasion they didn't use violence, but it does mean that they were trained not to, and that they found that the easiest way to get intelligence was actually to befriend or to find some sort of commonality with the people they were interrogating. And by the time they get to 1944, there's a lot of Germans who are more than happy no longer to be fighting, and who are happy to provide intelligence to the people who ask the right questions. So that covers a little bit of Camp Ritchie. I'm sure I could. I'm a history professor. I could tell stories for hours, but I won't do that. Talk a little bit more about some of the atrocity prevention work that I do. So one of the things I told Dave about this, and he thought it was something we should talk about. When I was just a wee young professor teaching about my third year at West Point, one of the things I got to do was to sit in on some meetings with some of the colonels who were on David Petraeus's planning staff and helping to plan the surge in Iraq. And they were talking about how they were going about it. And I had some questions about how we were doing it, not whether it was right or wrong at the time, but how we were doing it that they couldn't answer. And so what it convinced me of was that the armed forces need to be thinking a little bit more. It took a while for me to figure this one out, but I thought first the Army, but then by 2010 I was thinking about the rest of the services need to think a little bit more about how they think about the problem of what we call mass atrocity, which includes genocide, massive human rights violations, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. And why do we need to be thinking about them? Well, by and large, they happen during ongoing conflicts. And if we're not prepared to be thinking about them and thinking about why they occur and how you might be able to stop them, or how you might be able to stop them before they occur, then we're not preparing our students for the jobs that they're going to have to confront when they're the tip of the spear and they're the ones who are going to be asked to deal with these problems. And my students are working on these things. They're working on them in the Middle East. They were working on them in regards to ISIS. They're working on them now in terms of how we're dealing with Ukraine. They're monitoring these sorts of things in Myanmar and in China. And so these are strategically significant elements of what we have to deal with as a country and and through our armed forces. And I hope I'm making a difference in helping them be better prepared to think about these things.
You're representing my values, David, because not only am I a military guy, but I have values that expand beyond the scope of being a military person. And I think they're very important. It's very important to imbue our officers and enlisted with values like that, so that when you're interacting in an international context, that you have an awareness of what you're dealing with and what you're looking at. I do see the remnants of what you're teaching, because I do see courses now that you could get on your iPhone on China through the DoD, so you can so that you can educate yourself on China and Russia. And I know that people have read books on the Afghans, because if you don't understand these different cultures, you have no idea what you're looking at. You're there with a mission set, but you have no understanding of what's going on unless they've interacted with somebody like you who has told them that you need to be educated on this culture and know what the history of this culture is. So without going into too much detail, let me get to my wonderful co-hosts here. Anybody that wants to ask Dave a question before I babble on?
Okay, I have a question. So the Ritchie boys, are there things that still can't be spoken about, things that they did in the war, or is everything pretty much open to the public now?
Most everything I think is open, but I can't say that for sure. I haven't been able to get too much into the National Archives, and there's not like a collection. This is both the fun and frustrating thing about doing historical research is that there rarely is a file that says, here's the file on this organization. It's material that's spread out all over the place, and the bureaucracies are huge. And so some of it might be, I've been out to Fort Huachuca to the Military Intelligence Archive. There's stuff in the National Archive in I'd say about 60 different record groups. And if anyone has ever been to the National Archives, you know that they have hundreds of millions of, or maybe even over 1 billion documents.
Wow.
And so it's, I don't read that fast. And a lot of it is handwritten and a lot. So, but the armies the U.S. organizations are pretty good as bureaucracies. And what I mean by that is sometimes records disappear, but generally they're kept at least in duplicate or triplicate. And so sometimes it's hiding someplace else that you can find it, but it takes a while. That's why the people like me take time to write our books. But the question, the point that Dave just made about identities, I teach a course on identity and identification, about why people create groups and how they do it. And I think that that's of critical importance for people in the armed forces in particular. I think it's critically important for everyone to know, but for people in the armed forces in particular, because we somehow have to create an enemy, right? You don't go to war against your friend, you go to war against someone that you have constructed as an enemy. And how you do that, and how people construct the borders of their group, and how they build even internal cohesion, how violence is a part of that, that's necessary for our students to understand. And it's also necessary to understand particularly the history. That's why I'm a historian. I think that how people explain their history to others, especially when you're in NATO. I don't know, Dave, if you ever had this opportunity with any of the alliances, people will tell you their story of their country, and they're going to give you a particular, there's going to be an agenda to every single one of these stories, and understanding why certain things are memorialized and commemorated. These are all important for people who are stepping into other cultures. And that's what we try to at least raise awareness of when we're teaching our cadets, and in particular when I'm teaching them in classes like I do.
I want to say, too, about the Ritchie boys and the OSS, which was the forebearer of the CIA. Anybody out here, you can actually look this up on Netflix, because there's a cool little sort of it's a documentary, but it's done in modern day. So you can see actors of the SOE. So if you look up the SOE, where you come from, Stuart, the UK, they made the template that was probably that was copied by the OSS, probably the Ritchie boys, and definitely the OSS and the CIA, though. So the SOE is one thing. Second thing, regarding interrogation, and I've been through resistance training in a prison camp, and I've also been through advanced resistance training, which what we would call advanced beatings, where they'll get more physical with you. And Hans Scharf was a German interrogator. I don't know if David has heard of him, but Hans Scharf was the template for, hey, you don't slap people around. You offer them a cigarette. You be nice to them. You're going to get more information than you're going to get grabbing their fingernails with a pair of pliers. They'll just tell you anything, even if it's false. So Hans Scharf, unfortunately, because I don't like to give the Germans, particularly the Nazi Party Germans, credit for anything during the war, but I believe he was one of the people that we learned about that was able to get a lot of information with kindness rather than violence. And I'm glad that I'm sure that your friends that you interacted with the Ritchie boys could see that was a very effective way to get answers. We are basically out of time, David. So I assume that at some point we're going to do a part 2 because we just put the shovel in the ground and we just unearthed about 4 shovels worth, but there's a lot more to go. So I hope that at some point you'll come and join us again and talk more about your adventures in research.
Yes.
Sure. And normally, though, when people talk about historians and shoveling, it's not not a positive thing. It smells a little bit, but okay.
Hi.
Dave, and also as there's a co-host spot open for a future episode that we certainly could, maybe the Joe Ryan episode, we could make him really nervous.
Stu, you're getting fired. That's what that means.
No. It was in addition to you guys. Dave will be another square on the side while Joe Ryan is in the center. Anyway, the offer's open. I know you're a very busy man. I know that you're playing. Well, first of all, everything that David has talked about tonight will be in the show notes. His 60 Minutes episode, the overtime, both those links will be in the show notes. I'm not going to obviously give out any of your personal information, but at westpoint.edu, you can sort of get an idea of what David is working on at West Point and what he's championed, and it's something that I think you'll be very proud of if you're a hen hutter. But before I finish off, I want to give the rest of our co-host team here a chance to speak with you.
Oh, thanks. I'll go next. Dave, it's been so great to see you. I mean, I feel like we just really tipped the iceberg here. I mean, this has been really great. I was just so intrigued listening to you, and I feel like your work that you're doing and, to be proactive and teaching our military how to do this, I think it's absolutely amazing. Very proud to say that, I know you, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Hopefully we can meet up in DC before you head on to New York. That would be lovely.
And if not, I do get back here fairly frequently. So there'll be time. And I actually, I know for sure I'll be out at Navy next April. So that's the
perfect. Great.
Wander around and have dinner in Annapolis.
I love it.
Navy got the best town of the.
I probably shouldn't say this, but I do keep in touch a little bit with Bill Bajesi, and he said to me, he goes, that's a pretty nice place there. He goes, I'm not sure if I got offered there. I might have went there.
Can I interrupt here, Dave and Diane? How's the hiking in Annapolis compared to Colorado Springs, David?
Yeah,
Diane,
that's true.
How's the mountain biking there?
We got the Chesapeake Bay, baby.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the hiking and mountain biking is extraordinary compared to Colorado Springs. Thank you.
They're all beautiful, really. They all are.
You put the Hudson River running right by, Colorado Springs, and then you put the town of Annapolis there. Then you're all set.
Oh, we can build another branch of the military by all the best attributes.
Space Force, maybe.
Yeah, Space Force. Well, Space Command was headquartered in Colorado Springs. Space Force, I think they're also in Colorado Springs. So I may end up putting an application in there, but that's another matter. KQ.
I thank you for coming on, Dave. history was never my thing, and anybody who was in my 11th grade Mrs. Williams European history class knows that. So it was, I watched your 60 Minutes piece months ago when Audrey first told us about it, and then I was like, I'm going to do a little refresher here tonight, which I did, and I just and I know this is not supposed to be a long question and answer because we're already 5 minutes.
Go for no, good, do it, man. As long as Dave's okay, I'm okay.
Who did you and your team reach out to 60 Minutes, or did they come to you? How did that all happen?
They apparently found out that I was working on this, and they came to me. So that was nice. When it's always I was asked when I gave a talk, was this on your bucket list? And it was not. I never actually thought about this because as historians, that we generally don't think about being on television shows. But I'll tell you what, I am sure that I've reached more people than I ever will through any kind of book. And I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to do this. And we're making it sound like this was really about me, but it really isn't. This is a show about the four gentlemen that they have, and I recommended that they talk to a couple of them. The ones that they chose and the ones that were on that are really amazing people, made amazing contributions, and we're lucky to call them Americans.
Yeah, and I like that what I think it was Mr. Stern said at the end. He's like, I feel as if I earned I've earned the.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I got so choked up about that. I thought that was amazing.
That's part of what I'm looking at is that idea of citizenship through service and that sense of belonging, and for whom, who has to actually make that claim that they feel that they earned their citizenship versus those who don't. And so, I think I don't know if that one's up to date. So could be that I've got a lot of work to do. If anyone has any skills doing web design, I need help. But you'll get a little sense of me and the things that I'm working on.
I might be able to help with web design. I also have someone who does music, and I have a couple people who do artwork for the podcast that could do some stuff. So if you need something, I'll reach out to the folks that I've got in my circle of and try to get it done.
Walk-on music. I'm thinking about that.
I got somebody named Charlotte from the UK who's a musician. She's done music for this show. She did music for the UFO show, and she's going to do music for my new podcast, which I haven't told you about. I'll tell you about that off air. So yeah, I can. If you need help, just please let me know. By the way, for everybody out there, before Stuart goes, you can see David Frey's West Point page right there. If you want to see what's going on with David or you want to contact him, that's where you can find him. And then we'll go to our friend Stuart, your teammate from Hen Hud.
Well, David, thank you for doing the show. I think that what you're doing is not only amazing, but necessary. I think it's important that people understand history and realize what happened and that it can happen again. And, seeing a show like, the 60 Minutes piece you did just shows you how important it is to know your history. And I thank you for that.
Well,
yes.
Much appreciated. And thank you very much to all you for inviting me and for spending the evening with me.
Can I have one more follow-up?
Yes, ma'am, please. You can have whatever Dave time. If Dave has time, you got it.
As soon as Dave goes like this, we're done.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said your son was in the background. He hasn't popped in once. He's like hiding.
No. That's the spot in the corner. That's where my youngest was. I've got 3 girls. The youngest believe it or not, just graduated from college.
Oh,
wow, that's great.
Congratulations.
And that's if we didn't feel old before, then that at least is making me feel old.
I want to say to the Hen Hudders out there, by the way, we do commercials for local businesses around Hen Hud. We weren't going to do that because we had a lot to get through with David. So no commercials this time, but we will do Coles Market and all the other commercials next time. David will be joining us for dinner August 15th at the Paradise. So if any of you out there want to join us at the Paradise, Stuart, myself, Karen, Diane, I know Diane hasn't committed yet. That's just me committing her, even though I have no authority to do so. But there'll be a whole crew of us. Christine Karathanassis.
That was the 12th.
It is the 15th of August. I will be arriving the 14th, Thursday. I'll be meeting with UFO folks in New York City to have a meeting about that. One of those individuals lives in Verplank. He is not from Hen Hud, and he is one of the most learned individuals on UFOs that in the entire state, probably in the entire country. And he's quite young. He's only about 35 years old, but he's a brilliant young man, and lives in Verplank, right across from the Paradise. So James Iandoli is his name. So we're going to be talking to him about maybe having taking us for an experience on Saturday night. That's to be determined. But anyway, David, it would be an honor to talk to you if you didn't go to Hen Hud and we didn't know you. It would be an incredible honor, and I think the fact that you did go to Hen Hud and we know you makes it grander. You see me putting my hands up. I'm a yoga teacher, but I'm also a yoga student. So I'm thinking namaste when I do that, and what you're saying is resonating with me, and what I'm saying is the light in me sees and honors the light within you. It's just another aspect of one of the things that I do. And so thank you so much for sharing some of your time and your experience with us, and I hope it won't be the last time.
Mm-hmm. My pleasure.
So I hope next time you can talk more about your books, which is my
I
never.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about.
I love you, Karen. I meant to ask him what is the next project he's working on. Karen, thank you so much.
I've got a number of projects. So I've got a couple of different things I'm doing with the Richie material, which is that's my individual project. But my center is working on a case study of the Canadian general who led the UN force in Rwanda during the Rwandan genocide. Doing some work. The work I do is interdisciplinary, so doing some work in the future on how virtual, or well, not really virtual, but they're holograms essentially of the genocide survivors that you can actually interact with and talk to because they have natural language processing, and they've been asked the live individuals have been asked a ton of questions in different ways, and so you have a database of their answers, and we're looking at the actual way that triggers kind of an affective or emotive reaction among students, and seeing if that interferes with or actually enhances learning processes. So complicated stuff like that, working on a very large project on extremism, looking at how military narratives are exploited by extremist organizations. So got a few things going on, and you never know. So that's the one thing about learning and being in a profession where you get to do that. And being old enough, I guess, getting ranked high enough that you can kind of do the things you find interesting, as opposed to just the things you need to do in order to be promoted. So it's fun. I got great students to throw these projects at, and that's those are just a few of the things that we're working on.
Wow.
Yeah, I could get into the I'm sorry. I'd go ahead, Diana. I don't want to.
No, it wasn't me.
That was me. I said it was
Okay.
very impressive.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could get into a whole line of how the genocide experienced by the Rwandans might be particularly resonant with you due to your connection with the Holocaust and other things, and how obviously slavery was something that you had to look at very hard when you were studying Dr. King and the purposes behind what he was doing. So, yeah, that could be a whole nother thing, David. But thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, I hope that send me anything that you want me to put in the show notes, because when they download the podcast, all those notes will be there, and on the YouTube, all those notes will be there as well. And I hope that you'll come back and speak with us again.
Sounds great.
That's great.
Appreciate it.
Okay, for David Frey, for Stuart, for Karen, and for Diane Malice, this is I almost said DJ. This is Dave. That's my military nickname. This is Dave San Marco, Hen Hud class of 85, saying thank you, everybody, from the Hen Hud community. Peace out, one love, and we'll see you down the road. We're always wondering what's up around the bend.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay.